Inheritance is really important when we are working with a language like C# or generally when we are working with object-oriented programming. In fact, in object-oriented programming paradigm, we have 4 pillars: abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. In this video, I'm going to show you with a good example how important it is to be familiar with inheritance. Are you ready? Well, let's go to the code and start. So here I have my Visual Studio 2022. I want to create a new project, so let's go to the new project. And here you can choose any type of C# programs you want. I want to use a C# language and a Web API platform here. So I use a ASP.NET Core Web API project. And the name and the location is not important for us. I'm using a framework of .NET 7 for this tutorial. For the authentication type, I use none. And don't change these because our focus is just on object-oriented programming and inheritance in this video. So this is our project. And I delete this weather forecast. I don't need it. So inside of my project, I create a new folder. Add new folder, and I name it as entities. That's it. So inside these entities, let's add some entities, and you know that entities can be some classes, some C# classes. So I create a user. For this user, I want to have a key. This must come from system.componentModel.data annotation. And I want to create a prop, which is a long of ID. So I want to have an ID, or instead of long, we can use a GUID. That's it. And also, let's have another prop with name of string and a full name. And also, let's have another prop, for example, a string of email. And also, I want to have a field with a type of Boolean for is active. So I want to be able to track that is my user is active or not. That's good. Also, let's have another one with type of datetime and created at. Let's use a default value of datetime.now. That's it. So let's copy all of these. And I want to have another entity. So let's add a new class. For example, after the user, I want to have an entity for my roles. Let's paste all of them and choose what we want. For example, in this one, I delete this and I delete this. I simply use a title. And also, I want to have an integer of ID in this example. That's it. I want to have the is active so I can be able to activate and deactivate my role. That's it. So let's create another entity with name of class. So I want to have a classroom. This is just an example. Again, let's paste it. So this time for the classroom, I want to have an integer of ID, and I want to have a title for this. I don't want an email. I want to have a, let's delete this is active. I want to have, let's create a new int of capacity for our classroom capacity. And also I want to have created at. That's good. Now let's create another one. For example, at new class, I want to have a teacher entity. Well, in a real world project, we have a lot of entities. So in this one, I want to have an integer for this. And also I want to have a full name. Yeah, I want to have a string of phone for this. Also, I want to have is active. That's good. Let's copy this again and create another entity. So I want to have a student entity and I paste this. So for my student, I want to have a key of ID and a full name and phone and is active. That's it. So let's save all of them. No, we have entities we want. Let's go and use these entities to see what they have. So I will go to the controller, and here inside of the weather forecast, let's delete everything inside of this class. So delete this and this and all of these. I don't need them. I just want to have this class. So let's create its constructor because our focus is just on using these classes. So we have 5 entities and you can see them here. For example, I have the first one is a user. So let's create a new user. User of new user equals to a new user. Well, we have a problem. What's the problem? Let's press Ctrl dot. Using entities, yes. No, it's imported, and no, we don't have any problem. So good. So let's create another one. For example, after user, we have a role. So role of new role equals to a new role. That's good. Also, let's create a new instance of our classroom. Classroom of new classroom equals to new classroom instance. That's good. Also, we have classroom. Also, let's create a new teacher. Teacher of new teacher, good. And also, let's have a student. A student of new student equals to new student. That's good. So now we have all of our entities in here and we can use them. Let's see what we have for now. For example, for my new user, if I press dot, you can see that I have access to created ad, full name, email, is active, and everything it has. That's good. Also, for example, for the new classroom, we have title, created ad, capacity, ID, and you can see them. That's good. So this is our example. But now we have a problem. Let's say that we want to have this ID in all of our new instances, and for all of them, we are repeating it. You know that we have a rule that says don't repeat yourself. So we don't want to repeat this code so many times. Also, let me show you that inside of the students, I'm using isActive, and isActive is repeated in a lot of my entities. Also, let's see, for example, created ad is repeated on a lot of my entities. I want it. So this is a bad situation and this is not good for us. So what is the problem? The problem is we are using some different props, but they are repeating in all of our entities. And what's the solution? The solution is inheritance. We can create some class and inherit from it. So let's do this. So in order to handle this situation, first let's close everything and go back to entities. I want to create a new class and inherit from that. Let's do this. So I create a new class and I use a base entity for it. So what we need for this base entity, let's use a key, and we have a prop of, for let's say, long of ID. So I want to have an ID. And also let's have a prop of, let's say, boolean of is active. And let's use a default value of true. So in instantiation, it would be true always if we don't pass any value to it. And after that, let's copy paste it. And for is active, the next is deleted. You know that this will be used for soft deleting, but let's don't focus on it. And I will use a false default value for it. So this would be repeated on everything that inherits from base entity. After that, I want to have a prop of datetime with name of created at. And also, let's have a public datetime of updated at. And for these two, I will use a default value of datetime.no. That's good. So this is our base entity. Can we use this base entity? Yes. Let's go to our weather forecast controller, and here we can instantiate base entity of new base entity equals to new base entity. But this is not good. We don't need to use this class in our project. We just need to inherit from this. We have a situation in C#, and this is a good example to see that. So in these situations, we can use public abstract class. So when we are using abstract class, we cannot create a new instance of it. Let's check it. So we will go back to the controller, and here you can see that we have an error now. Okay, you can see that it says cannot create an instance of of the abstract type or interface base entity. So this is it. Now we have an error and it says that cannot create an instance of the abstract type or interface base entity. This is so good because we don't want to be able to create a new instance of this base entity. That's good. So let's go here and use it. So for using this base entity, we can inherit from this. So let's start and use it. So for the user, the first thing is we need to use the inheritance. This is the syntax. We use a colon and we inherit it from the base entity. That's it. No, we don't need this ID. Let's delete this ID. We need full name, yeah, we need email, is active, is inherited, and also is created at is inherited. So good. So for the user, now you can see that I have full name and email. Let's save everything and check it. So let's delete this. I don't need it anymore. So for my user, let's test it. So for my new user, if I press dot, you can see that I have everything that is inheriting from base entity, like created at, updated at, is deleted, and I must have is active. Yes, is active here and ID is here. But you can see that inside of the user, I just used full name and email. And this is the power of inheritance from base entity. Let's do this for all of our entities. So after user, I have role. Again, I use base entity. So good. So I don't need this key anymore. And ID and is active. So good. Now I just have the title for my role. And after it, let's go to the classroom. Let's use base entity and delete this ID and delete the created at. So I just have title and capacity for the classroom. So good. After that, I have the teacher and use base entity. Good. Delete ID and delete is active. We don't need them anymore. And also we have a student. So let's delete them and is active and inherit from base entity. So good. So let's close all of them and check them one by one. So we created a base entity and in user we inherited from that, and in role, well, yes, and in student, and in class, and in teachers, and in classroom. That's good. Let's go back to our controller and test it. So for the new user and let's check new role dot. We have all of them. Good. Also, let's test the base entity by creating a new one. So I create a new prop of a string of, let's say, something common, and I use a default value of a string dot empty for it. So I have a something common in my base entity to just for testing. So let's go back to our controller and for my new, let's test all of them one by one. So for my new user, do I have something common? Yes, I have. Let's test new role dot something. Yes, I have it. So good. Let's test new classroom dot something. Yes, we have it. Let's test new teacher dot something. Yes, we have it. So good. And also let's test new student dot something. Yes, we have access to it. So good. So it seems that our codes are working correctly, but this time we don't repeat a lot of codes and we have full control on the common things or the props or the properties. So also we can change them. For example, if I use the updated, no, I updated one of my fields to updated something common. And this time, if I go here and test, all of them are updated. For example, for my new student dot, you can see that I have access to updated something command. This is really so useful in your project. And that's it. So this is about the base entity. The next topic is a generic base entity. We can make our project even better. How? By using a generic base entity. Let me show you a quick example of it. For example, let's say that for our user, which is here, for our user, you can see that we are inheriting the ID from base entity. But for this user, I want to have a GUID type for my ID. But on other entities, I want to have different types. In these situations, we can use generic. Let's test it. So for our base entity, we can change it a little. And here, after public abstract class of base entity, I can pass a T or a TID or any name you want. This would be a generic type. So I'm receiving a TID, and here for my ID, I'm using a TID of ID. So this time the type of our ID is generic, and we can access it from the class we are inheriting from base entity. Let me show you that. For example, this time if I go to the weather forecast controller, you can see that I have all of my classes, but their ID needs to be instantiated. So let's go to the user, and here now you can see that we have error. By the way, no, you cannot use your program. Let me show you that. If I build my solution, I must have some errors. So build started, and you can see that we have problem. So it says that using the generic type of base entity of TID requires one type argument. If I double click on it, you can see that it is for classroom, and also we have error on the other. So it says that you need to pass the type of the ID, which is called as TID, to the base entity. Let's do this. So on the user, let's pass a type. So what we need for the type of the ID of the user, I want to use GUID. It's a good idea to use GUID for our users. It's better. Also, I have a role. For my roles, it is not important. I can use an integer type for my role. Let's go to the classroom. For the classroom, it is really not important and it is not big. So I use int. But for my teacher, we may have some teachers, so we use long. And also, let's go to the student, and for our students, we can use long. So this time we have flexibility on choosing the type of our ID. Now you can see that for the teacher, I'm using long. For the user, I'm using GUID. So let's go to here to our controller, and for the new user.id, if I use for, you can see that I have error. It says that cannot convert into system.guid. But if I use it for the new classroom.id, I don't have any error. You can see that because the type is int, we don't have any error. That's so good. And also, if for the new teacher, if we use some string, you can see that we have some errors. Why? Let's hover the mouse. It says that cannot implicitly convert a type of string to long. So it says that our new teacher is long. And also, if we use new classroom, the error would be cannot convert a string to int. That's it. And also for the new user, let's test it. Even for our new user, we have error. Cannot convert a string to system.guid. So that's it. And you saw that how powerful is inheritance in C# and ASP.NET Core. I hope this video helps you. Let me know your opinions in the comments. Have a good time and goodbye.